and can we talk? Because yesterday's events sparked a conversation about privilege and a double standard for protesters. Images of protesters storming the Capitol were compared to images of Black Lives Matter protesters from last summer. Many of yesterday's protesters were not met with violence or force from law enforcement, while Black Lives Matter protesters in D.C. were tear-gassed, hit with rubber bullets, and arrested. Ohio Democratic Congresswoman and former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, Marcia Fudge, said there was, quote, no question the response from police was different. The NAACP also made note of the double standard, tweeting a viral video of a Capitol police officer taking a selfie with one of the Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol building, calling it a dark day in America. The group also tweeted, "And you thought taking a knee was too much," referencing the backlash that Colin Kaepernick received for kneeling during the national anthem.
You know, what's interesting about this is that I watched this coverage from the start for about 5 hours. And what struck me and everybody else that was on, not only on social media, that people were calling me, is that the response from that, well, first of all, we need some answers from the Capitol Police. We know this because there's no way that this should have ever gotten this far. How many times have we gone to the Capitol and we can't even get past the barriers because our ID is not up to par or something like that? And then to see these random people storm this place, a government building, storm it. Police officers who were there did nothing. Not a shot was fired in the entire time that I watched. There was no tear gas in the entire time that I watched. And the only difference is the Black Lives Matter people were met with force, and they were peaceful demonstrators. But the only difference is Black Lives Matter, the protesters, the majority of them were black, and the majority of these people were white. So there's a racial element to this, whether you want to admit it or not. They did not anticipate that this would happen. Before the Black Lives Matter group even got to Washington, D.C., there were plans in place. They had military lined up. They had streets shut down. They had all these plans in place. And for this group, there was nothing. There was nothing done. And then even when they got inside the Capitol, they were threatening and they were destroying property. They were doing all these different things. The police had zero response. No response. If this had been a black group, shots would have been fired immediately, and there would have been a bloodbath. Everybody knows that. Everybody's talking about it on social media. There's definitely a double standard. It's not even up for debate.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Wisdom. And I likened it to if you had this outside of the White House, like we have seen before, the breach of the building, the smashing of the windows, the crawling into the Capitol would have been like the people outside of the White House scaling the fence, suddenly collectively scaling the fence of the White House to get onto the White House property. How do you think that response would have been compared to what we saw yesterday? And two other quick points, Wisdom. I agree with you completely. I have credentials to legally be in the Capitol whenever I want, which I do. But if I jumped that line, I would be immediately taken into custody.
Right.
Yet someone who smashes the glass of the window and goes inside and rummages through things is able to walk out, which is my third point is, even if you are, as a Capitol police officer, overmanned, if you are not ready for that situation, if you feel it is best at that time to let the people run their course and you let them in, that is one thing. But why in the world did you not stop them and let them out?
The difference was jarring. And even leading up to, I mean, remember yesterday we were talking about the threats that were made, that they were going to be bringing guns. I mean, it was boldly declaring what we're going to be bringing and what we're going to be doing. The numbers jumped as far as the permit from 5,000 to 30,000. So you're also expecting large crowds. And the security measures that we're used to seeing for large protests, particularly for Black Lives Matter protests, which in that case, they are protesting police brutality, racial injustice, very valid points. In this case, they are upset because an election did not work out the way that they wanted it to. So already the premise itself for the protest is invalid. And we didn't see preemptively any measures being taken place. And as it was happening, you're talking about the capital of the United States, one of the most powerful countries in the world. Hundreds of people scaling the building, going inside, with dozens of lawmakers holding this proceeding for the next president of the United States. It was disturbing, and I think it really harms what law enforcement has been trying to do, especially recently, saying there either is not an issue with racial injustice and things of that matter. This absolutely does not help their case. And the fact that Capitol Police have yet to speak on this, is also troubling.
It's inexcusable. It's unfair. The disparity was blatant, and it was overwhelmingly angry. It made me angry. It made me sad. And I also don't understand why it took so long for, if they were overwhelmed, and I know that they said, we didn't plan and, we had to just let it run its course, why it took so long for backup to come in. That's what as I watched throughout the afternoon, I kept saying, where is the help? How is this happening in the United States of America? And I'm like you, Steve. I mean, I've gone to the Capitol and my pass was expired one day. I mean, and it was like, guns drawn. You're not coming in here, lady. So it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And of course, this is the discussion we're having. We know you're having it at home as well. Make sure you weigh in. Use that hashtag GoodDayDC and keep it going throughout the morning.
Capitol Police need to step up. They need to explain what happened yesterday. No one who was inside that Capitol, who broke in unlawfully inside that Capitol, should have been able to get out of that Capitol. FBI now coming forward and saying, hey, let us know who was in there. That should never happen. They should have had those people in custody when they were inside of that building.
Having said that, Steve, too, though, most of those people were not wearing masks, and a lot of those people, there's pictures, so all of those people can be identified, and all of those people should be held accountable.
But it's disheartening because you see already everybody blaming it on somebody else, and that's just where we are in 2020, 2021. The people who are inside that Capitol, I don't think there's any determination whether or not they were at fault.